Internets, you listening to the Talkitecture podcast, sponsored by Rode Microphones, RODE.com. Log on to RODE.com and learn about professional broadcast quality microphones and audio equipment manufactured by Rode, RODE.com, in your ear holes. Internets, I am so hyped right now for this episode of Talkitecture. Let me tell you why. Let me tell you why. Tonight, inside the spaceship, man, we have an incredible guest. And I just have a bunch of folks around me that are all so dynamic, all so individual. And just, like, this is the shit that I talked about, King, when we first came here. I wanted to be the McLaughlin Group meets Howard Stern.
Did the McLaughlin Group have people with glossy hair?
McLaughlin Group had a gang of folk.
You see Joy's hair though? Yo.
Yeah. We're gonna get to Joy the Great in a minute.
Oh, here we go.
But King, let's start with you, King.
What's up?
A King, Internet's super producer A King. You remember him from all kinds of podcast fame. How you doing, brother?
What was that? I'm hyped, man.
Yeah, you hyped.
Feeling good.
Feeling great.
I'm kind of upset though, man. You know, as we record this, it's the beginning of summer.
Yes.
And it's the end of Gemini season.
Yay.
Okay.
So it's like, eh.
Yeah. But I mean, Gemini.
So now we entering the petty season.
Right, Cancer, huh?
Yeah,
you coming up on the Cancer.
All the petty cats.
Don't worry, Leo.
But yeah, I'm good though, man. Everything's cool, man.
Yeah, but it
I'm a
stop.
Cancer. What's with the hate?
No, nothing. There's no issue.
No. You good. You good. Barker, you're not supposed to talk until you get introduced, right?
So
people are talking.
You already on protocol.
People talking.
You already on protocol. Hey, Miguel, man, I haven't seen you for a minute, man. Good to see you.
Hey, good to be seen, bro.
You know, tonight is one of those nights, man, where I'm like, you know, I'm happy I'm here, man, because of the promise that I make to all of y'all every week to come here to, like, you know, to be the host and to be amongst y'all, and always, I'm always happy to see you, Hey, Miguel.
And I'm happy to see you, man. It's always a pleasure. We text a lot during the week, and then we get to catch up and elaborate on our text face to face.
You know,
it's always
IRL,
fun.
in real life.
In real life, man, the way it should be.
Yes. Hey, Miguel, good to see you. Joy the Great, good to see you, Joy the Great.
Always good to see Joy.
It's good to be here.
Yeah.
Good to see you guys.
Yeah, I told you off mic earlier that I need you to stop posting pictures on IG with you in leggings.
I told you I would do that.
I'm not trying to be a parent or anything like that, or like a dean of school, like, you know, but just, you know, to hopefully stem what I imagine will be the thirst.
I was just trying to show my shirt matched the wallpaper.
Mm-hmm.
Right, and you noticed that the pants stuck out.
It's the first thing you mentioned.
You pointed that out.
Yeah,
you pointed out
the pants.
Yeah, the pants
did stick out.
Right. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna ask you to refrain from that on Instagram, unless you want to start a separate account that we don't know about.
No, we're good.
Or that we do know about.
I mean, just
private,
us.
Just us.
Brother Christopher will find it.
Brother Christopher finds everything.
Yo.
He's a creep with a job.
Shout to Brother Briss. Bronx Brother Briss. All right? If it wasn't for the Bronx, y'all, all right, we would not have dirty niggas. You know what I mean? If it wasn't for the Bronx. But Staten Island niggas are actually more filthy. But anyway, Barker Yeezus, man. Good to see you, Barker Yeezus.
Oh, man, it's fucking always good to see you, Dallas.
Barker Yeezus in here chilling. Barker Yeezus, I gotta say, you got me hyped, man. You came tonight with a bag of goodies. And
Appreciate it.
And as repayment, you felt like for the time you kind of skidded off the road when we had Hawaii Mike here, which was, you know, in Internet's time. I mean, it don't matter when it was, but I'm hyped that you felt that way about us. You felt good enough about us, like, hey, I got some stuff to share with my folks. That's classy. That's a classy move, bro.
Very classy.
I felt like it was the least I could do.
It was the least you could do, sure.
Yeah, it was.
So we're looking for more next week, okay? We'll definitely be looking to see what you got for us in store. Let's just talk about our guests right now.
Yes.
Let's get right to our guests.
Get right into that.
All right.
Before we do that, how about you? How are you doing?
I'm out here, brother. I'm out here with y'all. Y'all give me a reason every week to come back here. You know what I mean? No matter what I did during the day, no matter what I'm working with, you know what I mean? Boom, I make it over here. Just like that night, Barky Jesus made it down here.
Right.
I mean, you know, I'm not as wavy as he was that night, but I make sure that I come here, man, just to...
I see you keeping it spicy on Twitter.
I mean,
as usual.
That's what Twitter's for.
Yeah.
That's what Twitter and Instagram are for. They're to be, you know, to add spice or have fun or, you know.
If internets, if you want to catch some Dallas Penn shrapnel, you know what I'm saying, just send him like a egregious tweet, and he got you to make that happen for you.
You know what? I'm deciding on Twitter, man. I'm gonna leave like Sean King alone. I'm gonna leave all black pain alone this summer. There's gonna be so much black pain this summer. All right.
Damn.
There's gonna be so many deaths this summer, and it's gonna be legit simply because we're gonna be worried about kids inside cages.
Yeah.
They're putting kids in kennels now to take our mind off all the black people they're gonna kill this summer. Fuck.
They just killed one in Pittsburgh.
Oh shit! We know about the dude in Pittsburgh. They killed several. Remember now, like unarmed black people, they're killing like 2,000 a year, some shit like that. How many days are in a year? How many days are in a year? 300. Like they're killing motherfuckers on weekends. Like niggas have no days off. You don't have no days off.
You can't take your color off.
Thank you. You got no days off. You got no weekends. You got no holidays. Holiday killed more of you on a holiday.
You know, you remember the guy that they shot in the back? He was running away from the cop.
Yeah.
Which guy? All the guys that got shot in the back.
No, well, this one guy.
The latest one?
They filmed it. It was announced
On the cell phone.
Yeah, on the cell phone.
Oh yeah. Oh, Walter Scott.
Walter Scott was, I believe, he was 50-something years old.
Rest in peace.
Rest in peace. At some point, I think that many of us think we're going to age out of like that demographic that, you know, you're going to get pulled over by a cop or, you know, you're going to get stopped on the street corner and shit like that. We believe we're going to age out of it because, we get jobs and we made it. Nigga, we made it. We got jobs. We're in an office. You don't age out.
No.
You can't take your color off.
You don't age out. They got bullets for you too, nigga.
They got bullets for you, but they got a whole system for you. And that
no, but that's the thing. This is my thing. Like, at some point...
Scott ran because he couldn't deal with the system at that time. He was like, you know what? And I feel his pain because the last time I got cuffed, I was like, yo, I can't go through this shit anymore. They had me almost have an anxiety fit in the back of a car.
He cut on them because he had a child support case and he knew if it gave him his ID, he was going to get caught up in that.
He knew he was right.
So he cut.
He was getting run.
It's cool. What I'm saying is, at some point in the back of our minds, man, when we hit a certain age, it's like, yo, we made it through this, to what you're talking about. Like, you know, systematic killing of black men, yo. Like, to make it out, to make it free of addiction, free of fucking, you know, like, out of jail, alive, and have your marbles.
Have all of those things?
Have all your marbles? Because that's the thing that people never talk about. Like, motherfuckers go crazy.
Yes.
A lot of my friends text me. This one motherfucker, I bump into him, right? He's on a bike, randomly. I hadn't seen this nigga in years. Older dude. OG nigga. Good dude. Solid brother. He's on a bike out of his fucking mind. So he's riding a bike and he stops. He's like, oh shit, Mike, what's going on? I'm like, yo, what's up, man? How are you? He's like, I'm not crazy anymore. He told me that, my nigga. He told me he's not crazy. Automatically, you're fucking nuts. If you're telling me the first thing that comes out of your mouth is, yo, Mike, man, I ain't crazy no more, dog. I was like, all right, man, cool, bro. I'm glad to hear that, man. You know, I kept it pushing, but like, there's a lot of motherfuckers in my group text that are out of their fucking minds, bro. We never talk about that mental health, right? This shit will fuck you up in so many fucking ways. So if you manage to be that 0.01% that makes it through, you're like, yo, I made it, my nigga. I got a kid. I got a job. My lady's good. Yo, I made it. And then these niggas put a bullet in you, kid.
Yeah. Yeah.
Damn.
But H. Miguel, I'm telling you.
Look at your face.
It's coming for you regardless. It's not a bullet. I mean, I remember, man, listen, I had going back to my folks' house. my folks had left Queens, and they had moved up in their lives. My dad, moved up in his career. My mom moved up in her career. We got out of Queens, and they got into Baldwin, Long Island. And they got into a house in Baldwin, Long Island. It was like, man, listen, it was some of the best years, me going back to my folks and just seeing how they had to put their shit together. How they had, despite me and my fuck-up brother, which will get niggas divorced quick, they found a way to stay together. And then, at 60 years of age, on his way to work, heart attack, bang, kitchen floor,
there
gone.
You go.
Come to the house after, he's passed away at the hospital, and man, saw the orange juice on the floor he had taken out of the fridge. Probably was gonna fix himself a glass of orange juice before he went to work, man. Bang, out of here, gone. Out of here. 60 years old. 60.
I didn't even mention that. Diabetes, motherfucking heart.
I'm saying the bullet is coming.
Yeah.
Fam, the bullet is gonna get you. All right?
That's something about our guest that I love. I follow you on Instagram, by the way. Huge fan of yours. I didn't even mention that when we were off mic because I wanted to catch you.
Hold on for a second. I apologize. Internet. I haven't even done our guest his due right now.
Due diligence, you can do it.
Good to see you, brother.
Good to be seen.
Yes, indeed. When we talk about legends and legends are living legend, but when we talk about legends, what we really talk about is we talk about people who translate the story of culture, translate the story of light and dark, and add to this continuity, because it's very important that the right people tell the story. Because if the wrong people tell the story, then you don't really understand how culture develops. You don't understand how you don't understand how the rose grows through the concrete. This gentleman, you can find him on Instagram, KEO_X-Men. Legendary living legend, graffiti artist, cultural icon, anthropologist, storyteller, KEO from the X-Men. Scotch 79. Any other graph names that I'm missing?
Man, I've gone by so many names. I think that a lot of the MCs borrowed this tactic from us. Now it's become popular to have all these AKA. Graffiti writers really started that. So yeah, I've had a lot of names throughout the years. My mama named me Blake, so that's my government. But most people know me as KEO or Scotch.
Dig that. Good to have you here, brother. Good to have you. Long time coming too. We talked about this, man. We talked about this a while ago, and I mean, just through our different schedules, through your work, we haven't had the time to connect and link up. But I'm glad we did tonight.
It's an honor to be here, man.
Let me set up the listener for the story that you're going to tell us. But 40 years ago in this city, a little more than 40 years ago, the federal government said, you know what, New York City, and they didn't just say this to New York, but New York took it the worst. The federal government said, I got love for you, but I got nothing else for you. And at that time, New York had lost all of its what was left of its industrial machine. So the clothing that got made in the city, the shipping that got brought to the city, everything that kind of fed the working class, the blue collar, the heart of this city, that had all got stripped from us. And I mean, New York always was gilded, but the thing about something that's gilded is like, yo, what's that plating on top of? And they took the steel and they replaced it with cardboard, and they replaced it with, styrofoam, fake shit. And this was the beginning of New York's fakery. And I'll tell you what, at the same time, it's New York's fakery. It's also one of the great artistic movements that we enjoy right now. A cultural artistic movement. I mean, it's the birth of hip hop.
Right.
And at the time, I don't think people recognized the connection of music, of dance, of presentation, of people's art, but people's desire to say, I have a voice.
I recognized it. I saw connections early, even though there wasn't a name for the thing yet. Nobody called it hip-hop.
Mm-hmm.
But it was all definitely intertwined. And there were other elements involved as well, too. You know, cats into skateboarding and punk rock, all that was jumping off at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these cats were graffiti writers from different areas of the city. So there was this cultural exchange whereby graffiti writers were some of the first to travel to other neighborhoods. Out of necessity, the train yard is always at the end of the line, right?
Right.
So you're in East New York, you're in Jamaica, you're in the top of the Bronx, you're in 149th Street in Harlem by the water. There's a 3 yard. So we had to travel and we had to form allyships with cats maybe we wouldn't have normally interacted with. Because I'm born in 1967, and Brooklyn at that time was a very divided place. There were certain streets you didn't cross, and there were neighborhoods that
Absolutely. I mean, New York City is super provincial at this time.
Right.
All right? Crown Heights don't fuck with Bed-Stuy. Bed-Stuy don't fuck with East New York.
Yeah. Never mind.
Matter of fact, 2 streets in Bed-Stuy. Like you can't cross Fulton.
Most people never left their block at that time, and cliques, you know, it was still gangs. It was still very much the warriors in New York. So graffiti artists were the first kids I saw that were able to navigate the city and get a pass, because the gangsters would be like, oh, they're just graffiti writers. They're not here flying colors. They're not a threat to us, you understand? They even admired the work that we were doing. So, really, to me, and it's relevant now because this is a very divisive time. The powers that be would like to pit class against class, race against race, nationality, partisan politics. Everything is very divisive.
Mm-hmm.
And we, as kids, somehow, and I'm not saying it was all kumbaya and love, because we had to fight our way through every square inch, you know what I mean?
Right.
But we somehow managed to work outside of that ism, that system that said, oh, you guys can't hang out with that. You know what I mean? Like, maybe in the 80s, if you saw a group you saw 2 Puerto Ricans, 2 black kids, and a white kid walking together, you say, oh, they might be break dancers, right? They might be, but prior to that, they were graffiti writers. Mm-hmm. That's it. They were the first to really not give a shit about the racial politics of the city, and oh, you can't hang out over there, and oh, those guys will kill you and they'll chase you out with baseball bats. We wanted to go all city.
What was the commonality amongst writers? Was it style? Like what allows people to say fuck all of the other shit and I fuck with you? It's style, isn't it?
You had to have style. You also had to have heart, because they would test you. You could be nice in your black book, and the first time you come out to the bench, you know, the writer's bench is a train station where we all watch our work go by that we painted over the weekend. Somebody will test you. And it was just a natural, like a hazing thing, a pecking order. The older writers would check where your heart was at. They said, oh, that's your book? Let me see that. Vamp. Mine now. And if you didn't stand up for yours, it didn't matter if you had talent. You couldn't be down. You were not an asset to anyone's crew if you were a punk. So bigger than just having skills, you had to have heart. Because I saw a lot of guys who, they never came out of their black book. The first time they tried to come onto the lines, they got robbed. You know, and we all took a L, and some came back the next week. You know what I mean? Some went for theirs and threw their hands up. Others folded up like a house of cards. So it wasn't, there was no easy entry. You know what I mean? And those kind of checks and balances, they wanted to see how passionate you really were about this shit.
Mm-hmm.
How bad you want it. And that is missing from a lot of culture today.
Mm-hmm.
And
the access and entryway is too easy, huh?
yeah, you watch a YouTube video and you become an expert, right? Back then you had to know someone who would agree to allow you to be their apprentice, take you under the wing, or you wouldn't even know where the train yards were, right? Somebody had to take you and vouch for you. So for you to be an asset to that older cat, to show you the ropes, you had to have certain qualities, man. You couldn't be soft, you know what I mean? You couldn't snitch, when you couldn't fold up when the pressure was on, you know what I'm saying? You'd be a liability. So in order for me to even, and cats taught me, you know what I mean? I'm not first generation. This thing had been going on.
Well, KEO, none of us on anything are first generation. We are part of a continuity of light.
I'm born in 1967. So the spray paint can came into commercial availability around 1967. Prior to that, yeah, people have always been writing their name or their clique or whatever on the wall, but they used bucket paint, right? Or a little marker. So in 1967, the style began to evolve in New York City. I'm not going to speak on anywhere else because I wasn't there.
Okay.
And I'd be talking secondhand hearsay, right? But what I experienced, I'm about the same age as the graffiti movement in New York City. So I grew up looking at this. And before I even knew who was doing it or how they were doing it, I was attracted to it. It had a mystique. You understand? These people were like superheroes to me. They had secret identities. And they seemed able to do things normal kids could not achieve. How to get up there? How to paint that on the train? When did they do it? Where did they do it? You understand? It was attractive to me from the beginning. So as a little kid, and most kids, if you give them crayons, they're going to write on the walls. I just never stopped. I evolved with that. You understand? So I saw a lot of other things, and I went to public school in the early and mid 70s when it was bankrupt and there were no art supplies, there was no sports equipment, things were poorly maintained. The schoolyard looked like a prison yard with concrete, broken glass, and a 30-foot chain link fence, right? One rim is bent, no net. So the things that were available to me as a kid, recreationally, just to have a good time, seemed very limited. And it also seemed divided like a prison yard. The Puerto Rocks had the handball court. The black kids had the basketball court. You know what I'm saying? It was like, I can't fit in there. Graffiti was the first thing where it felt like I could participate and add something, add on and build, you know? So I was immediately attracted to that because these cats were respected without being gangsters or killers. They somehow got a pass, you know, and made a name for themselves in a time when that was difficult. Now kids can just set up an account. It's free. You know, you can record an album in your bathroom. You can make a movie on your iPhone. Back then, for us to be heard, for people to know who you were, was a dream. It was like, what, somebody's going to come in a limousine and discover me and whisk me off to Hollywood? What are the chances? 1 in a million, right? But here, by taking this, you know, public space, the MTA transit system, which was falling apart and dirty, right? And painting our names on it, all of a sudden, cats knew who I was outside of my block. I would meet new dudes in a new area, and it might be beef to begin with. Who you? What you write? And I tell them, oh, I'm KEO. Oh, shit. KEO, word? I saw your shit. You're nice with it. And all of a sudden, dudes in the Bronx know who I am. You know what I mean? They're starting to put me down with crews now. And being a part of a crew that was citywide, had members in other boroughs. Now I'm part of a family. Now, because I got this X-Men name on the end of it's like your surname and your family name, right? KEO, that's me. X-Men, that's the family. So even if I'm Dolo, dudes know that if they fuck with me, if they jump me, there's gonna be a repercussion. So already my name holds weight just based off my artistic merits and my persistence, my perseverance in trying to get that name out there. It's marketing, promotion, you know what I'm saying? Repetition, drilling it into people's brains.
Determination. I mean, definitely. I love, even to this day, just walking around and seeing like a sticker or seeing a tag, seeing somebody get up somewhere, and I say to myself, oh shit, how they did that?
Right.
And I imagine, oh, they must have copped that when the scaffold was up over the building facade. Because sometimes you see something placed high enough where it's like, damn, how they did that?
Right.
And that's fun too. Because it kind of breaks up whatever thought was in my mind, and I just think to myself, oh shit. And I get transported to writing on walls.
So I remember like
Trying to get up.
74, 75, walking across the Brooklyn Bridge to get to Lower Manhattan. And Lee, you heard of Lee Quinones? And his partner wrote Mono, M-O-N-O. Had hit, what do you call them, stone pillars in the center of the bridge? They hold the bridge up.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's 3 of them, right? Iconic. The world knows the Brooklyn Bridge, right? They had the thing top to bottom. Boom. Brand new. And I was stuck. It said Mono Lee. And in my mind, I'm saying monolithic. This shit is incredible. Blew my mind. Cartoon characters, faces in the O. You know what I mean? So advanced for that time. And to me, it was revolutionary. It really was, because these were generally kids without any means. You know what I'm saying? And they reclaimed their environment. So you had to start to think about property and ownership and whose city is this anyway, right? Who built that bridge? Right?
Well, you got to rethink public spaces and public transportation and anything that belongs to the public.
And you also got to remember, we're now coming out of the Vietnam era, right? So dudes are writing, impeach Nixon, stop the bomb, political messages, free Lolita Hebron, right? Feed the worker, voice of the ghetto, save the people. These were messages I saw on trains, and it seemed to me to have power. And the MTA waged a war. The war on graffiti was before the war on drugs, before any of this. They brought a czar from Philadelphia. His name was Gunn.
James Gunn.
Right. The war on graffiti was a government, and MTA is a branch of state government.
Yes.
Against 15-year-old kids.
I was about to ask you that. Like, these were kids, like 13 to 15-year-old.
I started around 9 actively writing, but prior to that, I thought I was a writer. I was already hitting my notebooks.
I think that's fascinating.
Desk.
Like, because I remember being like, I tell my son, like, I used to go to Delancey to buy jackets, and he's like, "How old are you?" Like 10. Like, you were getting on the train at 10? Yeah, it was like 15 of us. We'd all get on the train.
On the train.
Yeah, exactly.
Taking.
Yeah.
We didn't just take the train. We took the train.
Yeah, 15, 20 of us. Go to Delancey or QP's, we were talking about the other day. Just children just running the street. It's a good time.
Beautiful time.
Good time.
And people say things have gotten safer in the city. I don't know for whom. As you were discussing earlier, it doesn't always feel safe. You know what I mean? I'd rather get confronted by a stick-up kid. I know all I got to do is pass off my chain, right? I might live through that. Than get confronted by a armed police, paramilitary motherfucker. How do I win that? I got no whims, right?
That's crazy.
So has it really gotten safer?
You would rather get confronted by a stick-up kid?
Well, the question is,
All day.
Is-
I know how to deal with that guy. I've been him.
it's gotten safer, but for who?
Precisely.
Exactly.
Precisely. So, and the culture is gone. It's homogenized. Every block looks the same.
Well, I mean, the Disneyfication of New York has made us Charlotte, has made us Atlanta, has made us
The strip
anywhere.
mall. It's a fucking strip mall.
Right.
Disney's actually doing some pretty cool stuff right now. Believe it or not, I thought the Star Wars movies they did were a fucking disaster, but other than that, like some of the artistic ventures they're taking with clothing right now, I think are fucking awesome. And
I mean, Disney's so big that Disney, by accident, ends up doing some good shit. By accident. But I mean,
Statistics.
Ralph Bakshi was artist at Disney.
Yeah.
And he got from under that. But all right, boom. Let's still
Listen,
come back
every
to this
great
time.
animation studio we have, Warner Brothers, Fleischer Brothers,
Pixar.
brought you Betty Boop and Popeye, right? All of them were because Disney was a notorious racist and anti-Semite who would not allow. He had all these Jews working for him. He wouldn't allow them to elevate within the company. So they left. And as a fuck you to him, because he insisted on family values and happy endings and flowers and birds in every movie, they began to make real raw shit. Bugs Bunny was based on a Brownsville gangster. Brooklyn Bugs. They made shit that adults could look at and go, wow.
Yeah.
This is raw.
I enjoy Bugs Bunny to this minute. I enjoy the double entendre.
that's fucking crazy.
When you read the text. that
Let's
they
go
have
back
those
to
cartoons.
Betty Boop. She was a hooker in the first episode because
Oh, fucking
Popeye
Betty, come on.
was a sailor getting off the boat on the docks, and she was like, "Hey, sailor." All right, these were straight underground adult comics.
Reverse Me Too?
I mean, listen.
To me?
Me three. Put me down.
Well, Brutus was definitely me too.
I'd love to get kicked out of Disney.
Brutus might have been kind of sus too, though, on the low.
You gotta get into Disney to get kicked out.
Who you think Brutus had relations with?
I don't
Wimpy?
know. I don't know.
Who?
He might have just for play.
Yo, speaking of, I always thought it'd be a dope idea, like a documentary about, what was those guys' name? Ferrari and Curly?
Oh, yeah.
Like track those guys down, like the guy you just mentioned that they brought in from Philly, and
Gun.
find him, talk to
Hickey
him.
and Ski,
Hickey and
Curly
Ski.
and
Hickey and Ski.
Ferrari.
Hickey and Ski.
Notorious Vandal Squad.
Yeah.
See, back then there were only 2 officers for each borough.
Right.
And they had heart. See,
Yeah.
these officers now, they look on Instagram and build a case on
Nah.
you.
Right.
No, these dudes would chase you through
They
the
did police
tracks.
work. They don't do the punk shit that they do,
If
the
they didn't
the
catch you in
snitching
the
stuff.
act,
Right.
They didn't catch
It wasn't
you.
real for them.
There was no camera
Right.
surveillance and
Right.
would build a
Right.
case.
It was real police work.
Yeah.
Not the snitch shit that goes on.
They
now.
had to run through the tracks and elevated tracks
Yeah.
just like we did.
Yeah.
They had to dodge the rats and third rail just like we did. So, you know.
I wasn't a graph writer, but because of those stories, I wanted to partake. You know what I mean? Because I'm
Yeah.
I'm a fucking ADD adrenaline addict, junkie. I'd hear those stories and be like, yo, I just want to go.
I'm gonna tell you right now. My first time on the tracks, I was like, yo, I'm not built for this shit. I'm not built for this shit. It's beautiful, and you get all of these like, because there was nothing better. Again, as a comic book nerd, I traveled around the city. I went to Forbidden Planet. I went to comic shops all around the city. So in my traveling for comics, that's my experience as a 10, 11-year-old seeing graffiti and enjoying graffiti and finding the great stations like Chamber Street where you could watch, a confluence of lines come through.
My bench was Atlantic Avenue, right on where the LIRR is behind you, right? It used to be a gate to the LIRR. They've since bricked it up. But we sat right there. It's the Uptown 2 and 3 last car back of the station. That bench right there, famous. People talk about the bench as though 149th Street Grand Concourse was the only writer's bench.
Right.
And that's not true. Every borough had several for different lines.
Yes.
And Atlantic Avenue was Brooklyn's main writer's bench. And because right there you had Samuel Underberg, where you would get the supermarket purple ink, which is actually called Garvey. So we were Garveyites, right? The Garvey supermarket purple formula was unbuffable.
Yes.
So writers would hang out there because you couldn't rack from there. It was behind bulletproof glass, you know what I mean? Like the chicken spot in the hood. They'd wait for kids to buy their ink and then tax them outside. So all of Atlantic, and I don't know if you noticed, where you wait for the bus now, that little kiosk, that was a comic book store.
Women, right there on Atlantic.
Where you wait for the B41. Yes, that triangle.
Right.
That was actually an entrance to the train station, that little building. And it had a storefront in the front, what's now facing the mall.
Yes.
Where we would rack comic books.
I do remember that because they had one up by Grand Army Plaza too. Still outside of that station. Yes, they had the little newsstand franchise.
Exactly,
a little newsstands. Yep.
But he had deep comic books, and even some of the underground comics. You talk about Vaughn Baudet and these cats. They were first published here in the States in porno magazines. They had their comic strips in the back of porno mags, so we would rack those too. You know, we didn't have Pornhub back
Cheech
then.
Whiz came from. I mean, why not? Why didn't he?
Well,
Cheech Whiz was a freak.
Yeah, precisely. That was the only place in the States that would run those type of adult comics, right? In Europe, you had a magazine called Metal Hurlant, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, which became heavy metal.
Yes.
Eventually, this thing made its way over here, but in the beginning, it would only be in the back of, like, you know, a straight porno mag.
I still got some copies of 1984. I mean, punk mags, heavy metal. I know I got a couple of copies of heavy metal.
Yeah.
But these things were incredible. Internets, you can pick up heavy metal magazines off eBay for the cheap. Some of the stories are incredible. Some of the stories I read in heavy metal was so like they freaked my mind, crazy. There was some wild devil shit going on in there too. Yeah.
It was all the rules went out the window. There was no comic book code applied.
Right.
That's why they were called underground comics.
Right.
So sex, drugs, rock and roll,
Killing,
violence, murder.
Yeah, seriously. Hard body shit. So you got all of these things coming into your eyes. Pause. Legit pause.
Legit pause.
Excellent pause.
Yeah, not in the eyes, please.
Applaud that
Anywhere
pause.
else?
Applaud that pause.
Listen, but you're getting all of this information, all of these influences, and it's. I mean, and you're saying it's not singularly you; it's an entire city that's getting fed off of this. So
And this is how
travel all
hip-hop
around.
music came about, the exact same way, because all the first DJs that I knew were graffiti writers before they were known DJs. And they developed a style. See, graffiti writers were sampling from everything. We were looking at album covers, right? Rock and roll. And we were meeting with kids of other nationalities that were hipping us to other forms, right? So the first graffiti crew in 1972 began at Erasmus High School. They were called the X-Vandals, right? And his name was Dino Nod, rest in peace. And there was Undertaker Ash, and there was Wicked Gary. And these were the first generation cats when they had long names like King of Cools, right? So you had a dude named App Superhog, became a famous DJ App. And you had another one named Flowers Dice that became known as Grandmaster Flowers. And these were the first DJs I heard playing outdoors in Brooklyn. Now, I can't speak on what was going on in the Bronx or elsewhere because I was too young to make those treks. But I saw these cats, and most of those dudes were of West Indian origin. right? So disco music was popping at the time. It was all about disco, right? So these cats said, well, back home, we build our own sound system, right? Show you how to do this. And they plug into the lights. When you hear a Jamaican talk about high-powered sound system, that's what high power really means. They were jacking the electricity from the
street light,
the lines, right? The power lines. So they came with this idea of DIY, do it yourself, right? Fuck a disco. You don't need a white suit and cocaine and money to get in the door. We can have a party right here. For us, by us, right? Don't cost nothing. But they had to play different forms of music because, like where I lived, you had PS 38 Schoolyard across the street. And
Where is this?
Well, it's gone now, but it used to be called Gowanus. Gowanus Projects was behind me. They would have jams right there in the center of Gowanus Projects, or in PS 38 Schoolyard where Colony South Brooklyn houses was. They would plug up the power there. Now, you had different cliques. There were wild Puerto Rocks called the Outlaws, right? They listened to heavy metal. They dressed like Hell's Angels. If you put on disco, they'd get pissed. Yo, can we hear some Slayer? Right? You had the West Indian cats that you needed to play a little bit of reggae for them. You had the Spanish dudes that were into this boogaloo and salsa, right? So these cats were able to find a breakbeat that flowed in all these different forms. So you could put on a Led Zeppelin record and make those cats happy. You could put on some funk. You could put on some rock and roll, some Afro-Cuban, and have it all flow and everybody peacefully dancing. Because if you only played one style of music and catered to one segment, it would be a riot. They would shut the party down. So the other cats would be like, fuck that. We don't want to hear that bullshit all night. So these dudes found a way to seamlessly blend all these different musical forms. And they also had a style which came from graffiti of being competitive, of battling. So if this DJ did something, oh, he brought 3 MCs with him, I'm bringing 4. Oh, he used 2 turntables, we bringing out 3 turntables. Oh, he got Serwin Vega Russian ass kickers, 6-foot speakers. I'm building my own speakers. Next month, we're going to blow him out the park.
Intranets. Jenkins & Jenkins has offices in your community. We speak your language. We accept your style of payment. EBT, debit card, food stamps. We even have a layaway program. You need law, you need Jenkins & Jenkins.
Redes. Jenkins & Jenkins tienen oficinas en tu comunidad. Hablamos tu idioma. Aceptamos todas formas de pago. Efectivo, layaway, EBT, food stamps, lo que sea.
With your first consultation, we'll give you a chopped cheese sandwich. We're Jenkins & Jenkins. We're in your community.
Jenkins & Jenkins, abogado de la ley, 1800-223-9797.
Did you guys know, like, what you guys were doing back then? Because, like, to be so young.
Having fun.
Because, like, I remember being in middle school and, like, I think it was, like, The Source or Double XL, when they started putting the graffiti pieces from like the 70s and the early 80s in those magazines. That was like a turning point in my life, because I'm like, yo, these dudes were so dope. And to get up on these trains, and I'm like, I had to be like 12 or at that time, and I'm just like, these kids had to be like my age doing this shit. Like, I felt like I was underachieving at that point, right? Because I'm like, they was doing that, I'm not doing nothing. I'm getting up on classroom desks. And that was big for me. And then you see this shit, and I'm like, yo.
But that's how the style evolved, that competitive nature. And you don't hear that in any other musical form where they're battling. They don't even call it bands. They call it crews, which comes from graffiti. All that hip-hop terminology, I'll burn you, that came from graffiti. And there were white boys from Morris Park with long hair only ever listen to heavy metal that talk like that. Yo, my crew will burn your crew on some graffiti shit. Wasn't about hip-hop didn't exist. They were building it. So that same kind of competitive nature translated to these cats the way they dressed, right?
They kept that energy.
They had to be flyer than you. Everything was a battle. The way they talked, right? I'll roast you, toast you. That shit turned into MCing, rhyming. These little
But see, my point to you, Q, is that when you say that stuff turned into, I'm explaining to you that nothing turned into anything. That it always was.
True.
That it always was. That people with soul always had soul.
Right, but it wasn't considered a unified thing until somebody else tried to package it and sell it to you. And decided, well, we need to call this something. If we're going to sell a product, we need to name it so we can market and promote it.
So
what do y'all call this shit?
Modify it.
And we call it rocking. Oh, they're rocking in the park. Oh, he rocked the train. Oh, that dance, they rocking. They're up rocking, they're floor rocking, right? It was just rocking. But they already had rocking, right? And we call what we did writing. And journalists couldn't write about it and say they're writers because they think they're the writers. There's a conflict of interest there, right? So they had to give it some sort of a terminology. And when somebody said hip, did it hop, did it hit hip, the hop, they said, okay, that works, hip hop. We'll call it hip hop, you know? And you get these films, Henry Chalfant, Tony Silva made a movie, you know, and they talk about, they say hip hop is rocking the lines with graffiti, b-boys rocking the floor with cardboard, right? They literally link all these things where we had never thought that deeply. At least I hadn't about it. We were just doing what we did, you know what I mean? So we had style in everything that we did. Okay, the cats who played basketball coming out of Brooklyn in that era had a certain boogie style that they were trying to burn other dudes, break their ankles. Everything was hip-hop. You know what I mean? The way you dressed, and there were no streetwear or hip-hop or youth-oriented clothing lines. So we were taking the regular gear that everybody wore and flipping it. Is how we wore it. And we would embellish it and put our name on the back of the jacket and down the pants leg, right? We would button the Lacoste shirt all the way up and turn the hat around sideways, you know what I mean? And another dude came with different color shoelaces. So the next dude said, oh, I got to beat him and get some more outstanding shoelaces, you know what I mean? And we began to colorize and customize our shoes.
That's a great point, too. Not to cut you off, but to cut you off, to just say that it's interesting to see the struggle now kids go through, all to look alike.
Right.
All to look the same.
Homogenization.
Yeah. Yes,
Don't
definitely.
be a homogeneous.
Yeah.
They're all about doing something nobody else had done.
I try to surround myself
About
with people that do the exact opposite.
About flipping it.
I was gonna ask you, like, in that time, were you guys like tagging over like other like people's shit all the time?
When I first started, that was more rare. You had to have done something wrong or have a beef to get crossed out or gone over. Later, it became so popular, it blew up so quickly that by like 85, 86, there was no room on the train. If you wanted to get up, you had to go over something. It was encrusted. It was layers on layers. So yeah, you were trying to decide, well, that's old and faded and that's whack, so I could go over that. I can't go over that guy because I respect his work, or I might have beef I don't want, right? So you had to pick and choose your spot based on who deserved to get gone over, right?
Facts.
You've been here from the jump, so you've really seen it all. How has the evolution of the New York City like street art scene from writing to murals?
I don't know what street art is. Define that for me, please.
Art that isn't surrounded by walls and a roof.
But they have street art in museum shows right now, huge museum shows. So how can that be the definition of street art if it's in a gallery and museum? It's not in the street.
Let's focus on the question and not like all permutations of the word street art.
I don't know what it is. People keep
There's a
trying
lot
to sell
more-
it to me
okay,
or tell
look.
me that I do that, and I don't
Yo,
do that.
on the
I'm a writer.
If you
I write
drive around
graffiti.
if you drive around Bushwick, if you drive around many neighborhoods in Brooklyn right now, you'll just see murals everywhere.
Yes.
True or false?
True.
So, how do you feel that has? Do you feel that is added or taken away from the New York art scene and culture? You know, as you consider it dear to yourself in New York.
See, now you're going to get into a discussion that I'm a little passionate about, and I don't know if we really want to go down this political.
I do.
Let's do it.
We got time.
Let's do it.
Bushwick and Williamsburg had a long history of great graffiti writers. Okay? They were from there. And Giuliani came, and they locked them all up, priced them out. Then your man, what was his name, came? The king of New York there, ran for 9 terms or something.
Bloomberg.
Bloomberg came behind Giuliani, right? So
No pause on that either.
One is, no pause.
No pause.
Bloomberg came behind, yes. He was at Ed Koch, a chicken hawk,
Dig
okay?
that.
I've been,
Dig that.
I sat at his
That's
dinner
aggressive.
table.
Chicken hawk.
Yeah.
Internet. You better Google that. For real.
Anywho,
You better Google the traditional meaning of the word hustler.
the man's
Watch yourself.
private life, what he did publicly, right? They had a zero tolerance policy. They said graffiti was a quality of life crime, that if you allowed one tag to exist, broken windows theory, next would come crack and hookers, and next they'd be raping your wife, right? You can't have that graffiti. Zero tolerance. Lock them up. Make it a felony. They got rid of all the indigenous graffiti writers of Williamsburg, South Side, Bushwick. Had great writers on that J line, okay? And then they imported street artists. All of a sudden, now we're encouraging you to spray paint the walls, but it's a white kid from Wisconsin. You already had graffiti writers.
It's a white kid from the.
just went to school in Wisconsin.
No.
I'm not referring to you
What
particularly.
about a white kid from the Bronx, an Irish kid that grew up in the South Bronx?
Listen, it has nothing to do with
With a
skin
single mom
tone as
that's,
far as
like,
I'm concerned. It has to do with your
really,
contribution
really talented.
to the culture. And
He's contributing.
were you here during the hard years painting on the walls? When cats would run your pockets.
Hard years is a subjective interpretation.
Nobody
my
wanted-
hard years can not correspond to your hard years.
Okay. We started this conversation with 77, Ford to City, drop dead, right? There were certain members of the community, black, Hispanic, white, a smattering of Asians, that stayed when everybody else fled. And they made do. They built little gardens for the community with no money, with no resources, with no backing from government or corporate agencies. They made shit happen. The school lunch program, that was started by the Black Panther Party. The free lunch that I had to eat because we were poor, right? All these things were begun in the community. We saw that our handball wall was dirty and gray and falling apart. So we as kids took it on ourselves to beautify that, right? We made Brooklyn a place to be proud of, to where hip-hop heads were shouting it on records, and the rest of the world took notice. Yeah, Brooklyn, Brooklyn, right? We took pride in this neighborhood. We built it back up. Now you got cats want to start moving in. Yeah, Brooklyn sounds really fly, right? I'm going to move to Fort Greene.
No, we're gonna change that name.
There's a lot of
We're
that
gonna
going
change that
on,
name. We're gonna
but-
change that name because I tell you what, Fort Greene, that that sounds a little too, hard body. Sounds a little too retro 80s. We're gonna move to City Point. We're gonna put a final E on point.
Okay.
Don't you just
Pointy.
combine the
It's
words and make
pointy.
it one word? That's what they do now? Like,
Anyway, my point is, with
So,
half
bro.
these kids that are called street artists, painting butterflies with titties on it, or Mickey Mouse with fucking whatever they're painting, would they be here in 78? Would they be here in 88? Would they feel free to paint
I don't
the
think
walls?
we can have. I think that question basically puts them all together in one group and takes away the individuality of any one of the artists in the pool of people that you're referring to as new artists.
That's
and
the pool of
muralists.
people that you referred to. I didn't
By-
bring street
yeah,
art into this conversation. I don't even know what street art is.
There's a commonality between those people, and that's the characteristics of their art. But judging them as people,
What's the
and
characteristic?
circumstance-
What's the unifying stylistic or media
They're,
of street artists? Is it stencil, wheat paste, spray paint?
No. It's any form of color on a wall that's visible
hold on,
to the naked eye.
So Diego Rivera, great street artist.
Via Google Street View.
Hold on. Just see, now we're treading into the space that people like to go into a gallery and have a big white canvas with a black dot painted in the center of it and call that modern art.
Here's the thing. What I did was graffiti
The question is, KEO.
writing.
The question you should be asking Barghees is, can people who lack soul, and we don't need to deal with skin color here, because trust me, there are soulless people of every complexion.
Zombies of all shades.
Yeah, those are fuck no's for me, dog.
So can people without soul be part of the authentic cultural artistic movement?
And does the community, do the people who have to look at your work every day, are they responding to it positively? Do they feel it? I don't know. Some artists are good, some are bad. I'm not the judge of what's art. I do know what's writing, what's graffiti writing. That has very definite rules. Okay? Street art, no one can define for me.
Graffiti's illegal. That's my shit. Like I want shit.
And
I
it was
want
revolutionary.
Yeah, it's revolutionary.
And it was communication and
it's
power.
adrenaline. There's a power in it, and there's a fear in it, and like that's what I want to see.
Painting Mickey Mouse with X's in his eyes
On a
is
legal
not-
wall. That's what I
You ain't
guess that's
saying
street
nothing.
art. That's cool.
Were you active in the years of Keith Haring?
Yeah, certainly was. In fact, I showed at the age of 16 or 17 in a huge group show at the Fun Gallery alongside Dondi, Futura, Zeph, all the greats of my movement. And they tried to attach some, what they called East Village artists at that time. Keith Haring, Basquiat, Richard Hambleton, Ronnie Coutron. There were a group of artists that we as graffiti writers did not relate to. They were not doing the same thing because we write our name. We deal with letters, which is a craft that's passed down from master to apprentice, right? It's communication, it's language. It also deals with math, geometry, okay? These cats were doing little figurative cartoon drawings. They were taking the Jetsons and the Flintstones and flipping them. It was pop art to me. That's pop art. And that movement had been going on. Okay? They already flipped Mickey Mouse in the 40s. Pop art reached its height in the 50s. So you're not saying anything new with that.
Let me ask you something. So, like you mentioned Futura, I think like he's of the people you mentioned, I feel like he's the one that it's kind of like he balances both, or he did balance both for me, right? Like I could see him like obviously he's a graphic guy, but he was also at some point.
Lots of guys came from graffiti and elevated and were able to break into the fine art market. Right. But it doesn't always work the other way.
Hell no, it doesn't work the other way.
So the gentleman you mentioned, Keith Haring, he came from Kutztown, Pennsylvania. He went to an art school there.
Yeah.
Okay? He moved to the Lower East Side and began, first of all, he came here to go to art school, right? If you're not successful, but yet you see you're not making any noise, your shit is not standing out from all the other artists trying to be fine artists in the gallery system, very hard to break into. I don't know the secret to that. But you see these kids with no galleries with no dealership making headlines, getting articles in the Village Voice. Little 13-year-old kids from the projects are becoming successful and known and making a name for themselves. So he sought to attach himself to that movement as a way to gain entry into the fine art world. Okay? The motivation is very different. We didn't seek acceptance from the fine art world, the museums, the galleries, the art critics. We sought the acceptance of our peers.
With
and
Keith
we were
Haring,
writing for our peers. Very different motivation, different
he's
style.
Super smart guy, right? Doing that. That's a brilliant way to break in, like through the back door, right? Super smart and like a great marketer too.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's several back doors. So
Hold tight. Hold
fact.
steady.
No Ed Koch.
yeah, listen. So the thing about
No
Keith
chicken
Haring,
hawk.
I always look back and I'm like, damn man. Whenever I read about him and I read his interviews, the guy, he knew he had a privilege, right? And he took it upon himself to give back, for lack of a better term, right? He used his privilege for good, right? And it's something we kind of look at people for, like, man, yo, you know you have this privilege, man. Just play ball with us. Keith Haring was doing that
He did that.
before it was a term, before it was a thing. This motherfucker knew, right? From Pennsylvania, where the fuck he's from. He came to the city, he looked around, and he got famous, and he was like, nah, man, there's something wrong here. I'm going to give people opportunity. Like, way before anybody was talking about privilege.
All right, but I could make the argument that LA2, who was his collaborator, who's from the Lower East Side,
He's
right,
the man.
was at the time a very young Hispanic kid, that he put Keith Haring on the map.
Right.
Not the other way around.
Right,
Keith
right.
Haring didn't open the door for him.
Right.
He gained acceptance into our world.
Into our world, absolutely. But he had privilege.
Yes,
Right?
and he did a whole lot for AIDS research and funding. The man gave a lot. I can't take that from him. But he wasn't a graffiti writer.
Yeah, he
It was
wasn't a
apples
graffiti
and
writer.
orange.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, yeah.
Can I give a big shout out to LA's wife Ramona? She actually spoke to me in regards. She's like, "Yo, I want to do something charity wise." She wasn't even sure what she wanted to do, but they have some amazing art, and she was like, "They're just honestly the most caring, nice people right now." They were at a show that I did in Gowanus, and it was just such an honor and privilege to have them
Where's
there.
Gowanus?
It's Smith Ave 9th Street stop on the GNF train.
That's Red Hook.
That's Red Hook.
There's no more
But
Gowanus?
Isn't it?
Gowanus houses still standing. Yes.
You haven't opened
Yes.
The area. So that's the thing I was confused about.
It's
Park
the,
Slope.
I
think
thought it was
that
the
topic.
canal that's
Gowanus
It's all top.
No, they keep trying to change the name, just like street art. They
So
keep
it's like
trying to tell me I
Park
didn't grow
Slope,
up
right?
where I grew up,
So I
and
looked
I
at-
don't do what I know I've been doing for 50 fucking years.
I looked at Red Hook and Gowanus as like East New York and Brownsville, how they're like side by side, like kind of the same area, same jurisdiction.
Right.
So like Gowanus, because of the central piece of Gowanus would be the projects. But then it's
Well, you have
it's
Gowanus, you have
industrial.
Wyckoff Gardens, and then you have Turnkey, right? And all that was in a neighborhood called Gowanus, which was named for the Gowan Indians, the tribe that lived there. Okay? And
Damn.
after the canal...
That tribe had to be part West Indian. Go on.
Wagwan!
Wagwan.
Yes. So that was bordered by 3rd Avenue. After 3rd, you begin to get into Park Slope.
Okay.
Right.
Okay? Atlantic Avenue and the Gowanus Canal and Smith Street on this side was the borders. Okay, once you cross Smith Street, you're in Carroll Gardens or Cobble Hill.
How many bodies
Okay?
in that canal?
All of them.
A
Still.
lot of bodies.
So for a long time, they didn't want to call Gowanus because it had a bad connotation. So the realtors named it Borum Hill.
Yes.
Even though it's flat as a pancake, every desirable neighborhood in Brooklyn was a heights or a hill or a slope. So they gave it a hill, just like they're doing with Brownsville is now Ocean Hill.
Brownsville was always Ocean Hill, but we never called it. No. We never called it Ocean Hill. We never called it Hill. It was always Ocean Hill.
I thought it was I thought it was a project called Ocean Hill, and that was it.
It's Brownsville / Ocean Hill, and really Ocean Hill.
Yo, gentrification is fucking real.
There's a little tiny.
Very real.
I think they need to rename Brownsville
real.
Ocean Hill for real.
Just in
Hill
ways
for real,
like
for real.
like gentrification is transcribing culture. It's transcribing culture, and we're losing it in the process.
A lot of quote-unquote street artists are being used as tools of real estate developers who are already sitting on undesirable
humans
property.
are all being used. All humans at all different types of levels are being used by
Certainly, but we were
scheme.
discussing
Yeah.
street art.
I know, and we just see it.
Look what happened in Long Island City with that legal building.
Look at 5 points.
Okay, can I speak on that real quick? First off,
Can you speak quick?
I certainly can.
Sometimes he runs slow.
Those walls
sometimes he runs
walls that got ripped down in 5 points. Artists were compensated for that loss. A and B, those walls were used as the interior for a new building that's going up.
Were they compensated?
My
Have they been
friend's actually
paid yet?
The name of the new place is called The Forge.
You said the walls are being used for a new building.
It's called The Forge.
Right. Who will have access to the Forge?
People that pay rent or mortgage.
So then those walls, then that art has been removed from the public space,
the artists got paid. The artists got fucking paid, Dallas.
What did they get, Bargy?
More than $0 fucking dollars. They got probably thousands. Okay, murders and
Bargy, you gotta be careful, man. You can't be somebody that would do anything.
Yo,
for money.
Dallas, let me talk, yo. $6 million fucking dollars. About $6 million fucking dollars.
If you do anything for money, then you don't have no soul.
Fuck no, I wouldn't do anything for money. But yo, I think artists putting fucking dope shit, letters, writing, and other forms of art on a wall, that shit getting torn down, and the artists getting and seeing justice and being compensated, probably not even enough. They got $6 million on several heads.
No, they haven't gotten a penny yet. They were awarded $6 million.
Okay, so now they got to collect on that.
Hold on, Bargies.
That's gonna be.
Did they appeal that?
Bargies. Don't have me tell you to shut the fuck up.
Wait. Next person that tells me to shut the fuck up, if they're under the age of 70, we're fucking shooting a fade on sight.
Bargies, don't have me tell you shut the fuck up.
I will tackle you to the floor. No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
Wait.
You don't want my smoke.
I just have one question about that.
I don't want no smoke, but Ernie.
How many artists?
Ernie, I have tremendous respect for her, so I took that shit.
For sure. How many artists were part of that settlement, that awardment?
Huh?
How many artists was that $6 million?
I don't know the details of it. I think the artist.
Then don't speak on it.
That's what I was waiting
for. Don't be uninformed in his
I'm speaking on the macro concept of it because all I'm trying to do is clarify my logic that was behind my previous statement, which kind of went over your head.
I was just curious to find out how many artists was actually part of that. Was it like 5, or was it like was it some hype beast? Like, hey, I did a little scratch. Well, you know what I mean? That's what
people right now feel entitled to at least several hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Obviously, the details are all being worked out.
Right.
And our guests and our Jenkins. We should find if Jenkins have one of the clients. That's part of that settlement. But again, Bargies, I don't want to have to remind you again when our guest is speaking. I
got it.
All right. Thank you.
Could you give us some background on that? Because the settlement. Do you know anything about the Long Island City?
Mears is a good friend of mine, and I'm very happy that he took his case because it sets a precedent, okay? That he took his case all the way to the courts and persevered and won a decision. Now, a decision or a settlement does not mean you get the money, because these corporations have attorneys that will appeal and appeal and appeal until your grandkids are dead. Okay, so no one has received a cent, and there were many, many artists to slice up that pie. So you're not really talking about any one person receiving millions. You're talking about a class action thing with a bunch of plaintiffs. Okay.
Where's Mears from? Where's he from?
Queens.
Where? Sunnyside. I think that guy lives in my building.
Oh,
I swear to God. The guy that owned that place, or he ran it. Does he have long hair?
Mears, no. Nah.
Yeah, I think that guy lives in my building.
Well, okay, let's go back to the history of that particular. It was an abandoned factory.
I had an office across the street from it.
Okay. So for years, it had been a desirable spot for graffiti writers to paint because the elevated 7 train has to slow down on that curve.
Yep.
You have to see it.
Yep.
Okay? So graffiti writers been hitting that building long before.
Court Square.
Yeah. Then a guy named Is the Wiz, may he rest in peace, probably one of the most prolific graffiti artists in New York City history. Maybe he wasn't the greatest stylist, but he was up more than anyone for the longest period of time. From the earliest days of the 70s, right up until his death, he was still doing it. And he died of kidney failure, and I believe a lot of that is due to inhaling lead-based paint for years. So this guy put his life into this thing. And towards the end, he had huge abscesses on his arms where they would give him that dialysis, and he was still bombing. There's still freight trains running with his illegal pieces on them, okay? That guy began to turn it into a spot. He talked with because even the abandoned properties in New York are owned by someone. They may be warehousing it or sitting on it. It's not truly abandoned. Every square inch of New York, some property management company has
their claw on it.
Right. They own it. They may just be sitting on it, waiting. It's a tax write-off for them to leave it abandoned. Warehousing is the term, exactly. So he was able to negotiate with those folks and turn it into a place where graffiti writers could paint with permission, which was a brand new concept in New York City, because we didn't have, people hated graffiti.
Yes.
Hated.
Holy shit.
It was a scourge. And they called it the Fun Factory. Yes. Before it was called 5 Points. It was PHUN Factory. And my man Mike Martin, Is the Wiz, may he rest in peace, was a good friend of mine. A cat, I could say this, I love that man. A real dude, man. Friend to me and my family. And I miss him dearly. He established that as a place where graffiti writers could come and paint legally. Now, most graffiti writers had no interest in painting legally. Didn't excite them. So that was more for us older cats who were retired. Right? It's no longer graffiti. It's like how you might go fishing on the weekend with your buddies, or go bowling, or you're part of a softball league. Yes. But you too old.
It was rec league. It was graffiti rec league.
You too old to actually play for the major leagues, but you still like to go hit the ball with your buddies, and you got an over 40 beer belly league. That's who was painting, and I'm one of them. I'm not running through anyone's tunnels, fighting any police. I'm done. I got a daughter that's too old to write graffiti, okay? I retired from that game in like 1986. So what we do now is representative of a graffiti style. But by definition, if you put it on a canvas or a permission wall or a legal wall, it's muralism.
I don't want to see that
graffiti.
Shit. I don't fuck with that. I don't fuck with no legal shit. Like, and you know, I collect. And like, you know, there's guys that sell shit, you know, online or whatever, like in galleries that were graffiti writers that became. I don't want that shit. I just don't. Like, I'll take pictures of shit. Like, I saw a truck. I saw a truck with it is, I guess, throw up on it, and I took a picture. Like, that to me is like, I know that fucking dude did this shit at night, or he did some wild shit.
Here's what I equate it to, if I may.
Sure.
When I was a kid, I was fascinated by tigers. I read books about them. I saw them on Channel 13 Nature Show. They were wild, scary. They ran shit, right? So when they took me to the zoo, and back then the Bronx Zoo was just concrete cages. It wasn't this nice habitat they got now. It was depressing. It was central booking for the tiger. And they showed me, they said, there's the tiger. And he was all fat and lazy and disheartened, soulless in the cage. And the kids are pointing at him and laughing, throwing popcorn at him. And I said, that ain't no tiger, Mommy. That's not a tiger. I didn't believe it was a tiger, because what defines a tiger to me is his, there's the inherent danger. You looking at him and saying, that's a beautiful creature, but you know he might jump out of that tree and smack your fucking face off, right? This guy had none of that. Whatever the soul of a tiger is, was gone. So a lot of times these graffiti writers tried to translate what was so revolutionary on a subway train to a gallery, and it lost its power. You understand?
Yeah, that's a fucking brilliant way of putting it, man.
That was amazing.
Yeah. Yo, by the way, rest in peace, Angel Duster. We were just talking about the 7 Train. That was a dude.
Crew. My brother.
Yo, bro, I remember there was one time when no one could touch that 7. I don't know why something went off in his brain that was like, no one touches the 7 Train but me. There was like a whole summer where it was just him. Mm-hmm. You would just sit there and just see it inside, outside, and he was like that guy.
But I'm gonna tell you what, X-Men had a lot of
demo
on the
right?
inside.
Demo was
insides, outsides.
Yeah, just X-Men had a lot the window scratching, everything.
I'm gonna tell you a story about AD. There was a pizzeria under the elevated 7 layup where the trains would park. Mm-hmm. He hang out in that pizzeria, and if he heard kids up there making noise, breaking windows, right, making the spot hot, toys. Angel Duster used to wear a sheepskin coat with a sawed-off shotgun underneath his arm. Yeah. He'd go right up there. Y'all got to go and leave the paint. Yeah. And if I catch you here again,
that guy.
He held that line down. He was a gangster.
Yo, dude, that dude.
Real live gangster.
Did you ever know his man LG?
Yes. That's X-Men crew. Listen, because of Brooklyn Tech, which I think you're familiar with, X-Men had members in all boroughs. So Tattoo is from my neighborhood. He lived on Nevin Street. You know where Livingston, right downtown, there's a weird house, looked like a Swiss chalet. Mm-hmm. The one that was Tattoo's crib, okay? Damn. And most of our members, original members, were out of Wyckoff or from the immediate neighborhood. Because Tattoo went to Brooklyn Tech, he met Soul from Queens, from the 7 line. Now, Soul was from 81st, from Jackson Heights.
Yeah, right. I know Soul. That's crazy.
And Soul began to recruit his neighborhood guys. We had a Prez for the Bronx. We had Moet in the Bronx, and he began to recruit his neighborhood guys. So it became quickly, we had 300 members. I mean, core members that were fully down. We were a movement.
Yo, people don't understand New York like that. Like, yo, I lived in Brooklyn for fucking 19 years almost. I mean, I heard stories like, of people getting shot, in between like Greenpoint and LIC in the north, and then like people getting shot around McGorrick Park, it was really like I never like understood the city being like that like.
I'll tell you a story.
It sounded like a war zone.
That would maybe solidify how strong our crew was at one time, and we didn't seek out beef really. I mean, I told you a wild story about my man Angel Duster, rest in peace. But for the most part, we just wanted to get our name up, have fun. We threw parties. We had our own brand of dust bag at one time. We had DJs. We went to the clubs, the fun house, you know what I mean? we weren't looking for beef. But if there was beef, we were deep, and everybody was down to scrap. And we had some members that they didn't even really write. They were just leg breakers. You know what I mean? Right. So the Coney Island yard, what they call the Dewey yard, because you could sneak in through Dewey High School behind their handball court, there was a hole in the fence. The largest yard in the system is actually 3 yards. Stillwell, Big Coney, and Little Coney, right? That was the territory of a crew called the Wow Crew from Marlboro Projects, Words of Wisdom crew. And enough respect to them, they did their thing. And they held that yard down. And they also, their projects is right there. And they were affiliated with outlaws they ran Coney Island. I'm talking about killers. So you couldn't fuck with them in their own neighborhood because the whole projects would empty on you. They could shoot 22 rifles with a scope into the yard if they saw you riding in there. X-Men used to go up in there with no problem. They gave us a pass. Not to say that, we chumped them or it was a fear thing, but it was a mutual respect thing that nobody else in the city had. You could not go there in the 80s without catching. RTW had to join forces with WOW. RT WOW. Min and Bo formed an alliance with Rich TNS from the Lower East Side so that they could go all city. So because of Rich and EL3, rest in peace, they had the City Hall layups and the Brooklyn Bridge layups, which are basically under one police plaza and under all that, right?
City Hall was an ill station too.
Yes.
City Hall, and then even Delancey.
Delancey was a crazy station too.
So a cat named Min One, another all-city writer, I put him up there with the, you can list on one hand the cats who really did damage like that. Min One formed alliances, strategic alliances with the illest crews, so that they were able to y'all can be down with RTW. Right. In fact, I'm gonna roll you up right now. You know what I mean?
Right. With the
he was a politician, so that he was
right.
able to go all city.
Let me ask you this, man. Like when we were coming up, there were crews, and I love these guys to death. But like around our way, after Angel Duster died, there was a crew called DTC, Down to Crash. They were sort of a graffiti crew, but they were more of a gang. So like at some point, like they were taking on, like you mentioned earlier, the tenets of a graff crew, but like just beating the shit out of people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then just writing, there'd be like 2 or 3 writers down.
I told you when I was a kid, I watched graffiti writers circumvent a lot of the gang politics and kind of squash that. Towards the mid-'80s, it got increasingly violent and things went the other way. I watched breakdancing crews turn into outlaw gangs, and some of them are still around.
Right.
They were called... Okay, from my neighborhood, you had the Floor Master Dancers, FMDs. At some point, they changed their name to the Filthy Mad Dogs and start dressing like wild motorcycle, like Hell's Angels, wearing MC boots and chains. Now, how are you a Floor Master Dancer with MC boots on? Ain't nobody dancing in them fucking.
It was like the mid to late '80s where it kind of and it kind of coincided like. Right when AD died too, there was like the CC Boys, the Cocaine City Boys. Yeah. Where that wasn't a graff gang. I mean, they got up, you would see CC Boys and shit, but it was
uptown on the one line. You had the Ball Busters. You had a whole lot of crews that were bigger than graffiti and much more violent. And a lot of them became. I'm not here to dry snitch or anything. Yeah. All them wild cowboys.
Yeah, they're all ball busters.
A lot of them came out of graffiti crews.
Right. Well, I'm going to tell you a quick story right now. Incidents as we wrap up this incredible episode of Talk. This is like, KEO, we need you.
Part 2, 3, 4. Monthly. Yeah. That's actually a better.
This got to be a monthly series here. But, Paige Miguel, you spoke about DTC Down to Crash, and in 1992, there was an event that there was a string of events, but this was one of the events that changed the culture of New York City. There was a murder of a tourist visiting the city with his folks from Utah.
Yeah.
The kid's name was Brian Watkins.
Yeah.
Yes.
And his parents were being robbed at a subway station called 7th Avenue. 7th Avenue is the nearest subway station to a nightclub called Roseland. Roseland Disco, Roseland Ballroom. And it was a group of kids from Corona, DTC kids, who ultimately stabbed up Brian Watkins.
Yeah.
And
they were going to Roseland.
They were going to Roseland. Matter of fact, they did go to Roseland.
They shut Roseland down because of that. I saw things on that dance floor in Roseland. Bro, I've seen horror. I ain't drawing stitch on nobody, but I saw shit on that dance floor. Bro.
The Funhouse, same way.
God
Square, Latin
and may he rest in
Latin
everlasting
Union
peace.
Square,
but they shut down.
1018.
Dinkins shut down Roseland because of something that happened at a train station with kids going to Roseland.
And that was the crew you're referring to.
Yes,
that's a little after my time.
Right. Reopened.
Those were those kids. That was not you. That was after. I mean, to be honest with you, that's after my time.
Right.
That's after my time. I mean,
it devolved quickly because. Okay, and I know we're short on time. I want to close with this. This was a movement that unified kids and gave a voice to the voiceless and was creative and beautiful. And because of the war on the same way when we declare war on terrorism and we bomb this country back to the Stone Age, now they're still fighting, but they're fighting with rocks, right? Because we destroyed their infrastructure. So they had to devolve, right? But we didn't kill their spirit. So when this war on graffiti came, the tactics had to change, and it became more uncivilized, and it devolved because of outside pressures. So to the point where dudes had to scratch the windows with a rock.
Yeah.
It went back to primitive caveman shit, but it never. They still ain't won that war on graffiti.
I love to see that shit. Like, I know I'm an asshole, but whenever I see I see the scratching, I'm like, this motherfucker.
I mean,
I want to know who that son of a bitch.
It's about freedom.
Have hope. People still have hope. There's still a soul
I'm here.
out there.
I exist.
There's still a soul out there when you're willing to do it illegally.
Yeah.
You know.
And I want to say happy birthday to the great Chino BYI.
Oh, for real.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Dave. We love you, man. We
Happy New Year,
appreciate you
brother.
because
Happy New
this sister mentioned the Source magazine and how that had the graffiti in the back pages and spread this movement all over the world before any other periodicals were really checking for it like that, mainstream periodicals.
Chino, happy birthday, man. Come on to Talkitecture podcast, brother. Internets, man, thank you for tuning in to another episode. All right, make sure before you log off today, you go to rode.com. That's Rode.com, because we sound so ill because of these Rode microphones we got in front of us right now.
Oh.
And also, if you need
That's not the same dude from Rhodes Scholar, is it?
No. But Jenkins and Jenkins do have a Rhodes Scholar in their law firm. Jenkins and Jenkins, 1-800-223-9797 if you need law. Internets, it's Talkitecture.
Bonjour.
Cheer.
Peace.
The Talkitecture podcast is a presentation of the Loudspeakers Network, where we always say rest in peace to Combat Jack. Episodes are executive produced by A. King and Dallas Penn. All episodes are engineered superbly by Brother Christopher. 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 By Brother